Welcome to Playform Radio, a show where we talk about creative entrepreneurship. Today, we are showcasing the latest creative entrepreneurs to launch projects on ArtMine, Playform's new generative art marketplace. Using Playform, creators develop AI models based on their original inputs to create models that collectors can mine for unique one-of-a-kind NFTs. Recently, we launched ArtMine on the Polygon network, and today we'll be showcasing both Ethereum and Polygon-based projects. I'm really excited to share that we have a lot of updates coming up on ArtMine in the future. The platform will continue to grow and develop, and we've learned so much from working with the Genesis artists we've been featuring today. So just to give you a little bit more context into how ArtMine works, I'll just kind of share with you a little project here from one of our guests today. So I'm going to just share my screen here so that you can see how this new platform works. So when you visit ArtMine, you'll see different projects that artists have created. And by entering 8-digit numbers, you can generate an output that has been created through this human artist collaboration using Playform AI. These projects were all created using Playform's proprietary GAN software. And as you can see, the artist will train a model that will output in all these millions of possibilities that you can mine. This project actually was done by Terry Svetaro, who is going to be joining us today. And so I'm excited to invite Terry to the stream.
Hi, Jen. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and your project is amazing. I was just playing around with it earlier today, and I just feel like it reminds me of Georgia O'Keeffe, but like Georgia O'Keeffe 2.0. Like, what could you do with that style, that vision, from a 2022 perspective? So thank you so much for coming on today. I know you put together a little presentation to share with the audience, and so why don't we start with that?
Okay, I did. And by the way, I'm so flattered to be compared to Georgia O'Keeffe. She was one of my favorites.
You can definitely see the inspiration there. That was kind of immediately where my mind went. I was like, wow, this is like Georgia O'Keeffe in 2022 with the power of AI connected to the blockchain.
It's great. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. And okay.
All right, and let me add that. Got a little studio thing going on here. All right, yeah, take us through this. This is interesting.
Okay, well, thanks, Jen. I'm Terry Svetaro. My project is Flower Magic, and it's one of my first projects that I worked on the Playform platform. So a little bit about myself. I've been designing and creating digital art since the 80s. I also am a writer, so I've written a couple of books, one a science fiction book called Laundry Gate, and a couple of other picture books. I also produced the Evolution of Science Fiction series, which I love. And I still do a lot of work in digital in terms of creating products and things like that. And I have a wonderful cat, which hopefully he won't sneak in here. So why I do what I do and how this influenced my ArtMine project, Flower Magic. So like Jen mentioned, bringing together like human and technology is really interesting. And that's really interesting to me as well. But also combining natural elements to create these incredible kaleidoscopic experiences. So how I do it, a little bit about the tools. I use Playform a lot, and you'll see that. I also have a library of hundreds of digital photos that I've taken throughout the past couple of decades, plus a library of geometric shapes and symbols, which I like to infuse. And lately, I've been experimenting with AI-generated music. So the outputs for my stuff is, or my creative, is digital art with NFT, but also digital fine arts with certificate of authenticity, a lot of physical products, including fashions, accessory, tabletops, and I mentioned the books. But here you could see a lot of like Playform coming to life in the physical objects that I created. This is a collection called Trippendicular, which is printed on metal, but I also have the Trippendicular NFT collection. But let's talk about flower magic. So as I mentioned, the inspiration came from hundreds of flower images and photos that I've taken throughout the past couple of decades. And in there, when I look at the flowers, I'm looking and seeing like if they sound like an opera, they're dramatically lit, and it's very intimate. Like when I photograph, I get very close to them. But as Jen showed previously, look what Playform did. I uploaded like about 80 images, and this was the inspiration for thinking that this would make a really fun project for ArtMind. So here you could see this kinetic influence. The color is spectacular. The flowers are delicious, even more so than the photos that I actually have taken. And here's a little demo of like how Playform is thinking. You could see in this one, it's actually looking and thinking about the leaves, like I think about the leaves when I get up very close. Here, I mean, this is just breathtaking, even though it's very early on in its discovery and understanding of what a flower is. As you go, like, oh, I'm in love with that texture in the upper right-hand corner. I just think it's breathtaking, along with that color. Here you get more vibrant colors, and you can see almost excitement. Like, I think Playform was actually having fun with these images. And then the final output. But flower magic is incredible. Like the images, the color, it's breathtaking. Every time I look at it or generate a piece, it's like, oh my God, I'm inspired by it. Even though it's inspired by maybe me, my photos.
There is that circular logic that's always happening when you collaborate with AI.
I know it is. It's like, I think there's been a question for artists that have been going around, like artists like myself who like to use AI. Do we still consider ourselves artists, even though the AI is doing a lot of the heavy lifting? And I think we're definitely a lot more. We're creative directors. We're directors. We're leading the orchestra. We're helping, the Playform understand what we like and what we don't like, and what colors are appropriate and not appropriate, and things like that.
Like AI doesn't have taste, right? Like AI doesn't, it's an unbiased model that's just kind of working with what you're giving it. But the AI doesn't have like any kind of taste or style. It's, that's kind of the beauty of it and why it's so, like where we find it so powerful. Each artist, as everyone's going to see throughout this show, each artist does something completely different with the tool.
They do. I have a question for you, Jen. Is the AI actually learning about my taste? Because I've seen some repetition in other projects on things that I really like, and it looks like it's actually using some of that.
Well, so each model is unique, so it's not going to take anything from one model to the next. But what it's really learning is, and what you're probably seeing, we've had a lot of artists say this, is that you do have some kind of unique taste and style. And your inputs probably kind of echo that style over and over again. And that's why you're seeing similarities between one model to the next. Like you mentioned, like you like to get close up to flowers. You probably focus on texture, that type of stuff. And that behavior, you're training the AI to behave in that same way as well. So like one of the artists we worked with, when she started training all her models, she started to realize I always use a very unique color, purple. Like there's this like purple color she's realized is her signature. And she didn't really know that until she started training the AI. She kept seeing that color keep coming up. And then she started looking at her artworks and started realizing like, wow, I always use the same color.
Oh my God, that's a brilliant observation. Like even looking at this, I could tell like what my palette is. It's like pinks and violets and reds and orange and yellow. And it's like, wow, it really does pick up on that.
Yeah,
And
like someone else might be training a model also using flowers, but their flower choice is going to be so different. And so just naturally, the results are also different because the AI is learning from whoever is driving it.
mhm, which is great. I'm gonna stop sharing, and so we could talk about just the project in general.
Yeah, what I'm curious about is, I think, you've done something really cool with the flowers. Like I said, it's just so reminiscent of, an update of Georgia O'Keeffe. What are some of your plans for this project? Where is it going to go from here?
So are you talking about flower magic specifically, or expanding
Um,
on flowers?
yeah, and also your other projects as well. Like what more can people expect from you in the future?
So I think I mentioned I'm going to publish this book called Sky Clouds, and every single image in here has been done with Playform. So I think my next project I might propose is on using those clouds that I have, because again, the clouds, they're not just your average clouds that I was photographing. They're clouds with orange and blues and different colors in them. And I think that might be another fun project to put forth. But in addition to that, I'm still expanding on the tripendicular theme, as well as I have another one called Cosmic, and all of these are have Playform art in them, as well as there's a couple of other projects that I'm working on that would be fun. One about time, which is externalism, because I wrote a book on quantum physics, a picture book. I thought I should do something on time. And also because of the science fiction thing, I wanted to do some spacey art. So I'm going to look for images or even draw out some and upload them to Playform and see what kind of spacey art we can get from that. I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Your interest seems so varied. And I think like your art practice in general also is just so varied, right? Like you're doing everything from science fiction to nature, and you're also exploring kind of all the spaces in between, as well as doing everything from like turning art into clothing, fashion, to books, to NFTs. Like, how do you what do you think ties that all together?
The problem is I don't see a difference. I
Well, it
honestly,
all comes from you,
right.
obviously. Yeah.
I work thematically, and because of my business training, I actually have a spreadsheet of all the themes that I want to create. And within that, I go back and I'm like, okay, well, this will make a great NFT, and that's it, nothing else. Or this will be an NFT and a piece of art, and it might look great on a scarf. So that's the way I look at it. So I sort it out that way. There is a logic to it, even though I'm having a lot of fun with the like uniqueness that Playform brings forward from the images. So, and also the different things, even though it might be science fiction, there's still that signature that I'll put in there that's mine. So
I want to dig in a little bit more. You said that you come from a business background, and I can relate. It sounds like you really look at each project and you think like, where is the market for this? Should it be clothing? Should it be an NFT? What do you mean by kind of that background?
Oh, so I have an MBA in marketing
Wow.
from Regis University, and I was in digital for decades, since the very beginning of the commercialization of it. But
You're
you're
putting
right.
together business, quantum physics,
Yes.
sci-fi, like nature. There's a lot going on in that bag.
There is, but it's all related. I mean, my theme is like, what's the confluence of the human condition and technology and nature, and how does it all come together? So I look at it like that. And from a business perspective, I had a huge learning experience last year. I created something like 879 products. And so I went back and I looked at my spreadsheet of what was selling and what wasn't selling. And that's the business side, right?
Mhm.
So clothing is so hard, even though there are a lot of fans out there that love my clothing. It's just hard. So I'm probably going to tailor back on the clothing and do more accessories. So those are the things that I learned. And that's the business side, you know, it's like, okay, go what your customer loves instead of, you know, pushing it out there. But I had to push it out there because no one knew what I was doing. So
Well, that's kind of what we love to talk about on this show, right? Like, I think right now, especially with social media, with technology, with tools like AI and, you know, all the new opportunities in blockchain, there's an opportunity for like this do-it-yourselfness that's happening where you can be the creative entrepreneur. You can bring those skills together and, you know, form like, you know, create an art business, create a fashion business, like just the limitless possibilities. And it sounds like, you know, you're really at that spot. You're kind of at the intersection of all things technology, science, nature, art, and business, and pulling all those together for your own creative entrepreneurship.
yeah, it's fun, but it's also a great learning experience, like I mentioned. And it's also knowing like when should you tailor back, you know, when should you pull back and stick with something that's actually working. So I found that, you know, there are customers out there that like to buy, or collectors out there that want both the NFT as well as the physical piece of wall art to go with that. And I'm like, wow, I'm like, okay, I'll do that. And next thing you know, you get people buying it. So
Yeah.
that's fun.
There's actually a project on ArtMine right now where if you collect 10 of the NFTs, you can get a physical artwork.
Really? I like that. Oh, sign me up.
Yeah. So, you know, there's so many kind of tools that we're building in so that artists can really kind of just flex. Like we see it as really being a platform for creators so that they can do what they want to do, because ultimately, you know, people like you have a vision, you know, your audience, and like we don't see a need to interfere with that. We don't want to be another gatekeeper, but really be a platform where people can do what they want.
Yeah, you're definitely, I love Playform. Like I said, I'm probably, everything has to have Playform in it. That's it.
Well, we've loved having you here on Playform Radio. Thank you so much for coming to share about your project. If you want to check out Terry's project and generate your own results from this model, go to artmind.playform.io. Flower Magic is there live right now. I forgot how many NFTs are in this collection.
150.
So there's only 150 of these to mine. So get in before they're all gone. And thank you so much, Terry, for your time.
Jennifer, thank you so much. This was delightful. Take care.
Great to have you. Next, we're going to be talking about another project that I'm super excited about. I think we just lost our guest for a second there, though. So we're going to actually be, I think we're going to have to skip to the next guest. Sorry about that, you guys. I think there might be some technical difficulties. But Mitch, are you ready? I'm going to bring you on.
Hi.
Hi, Mick. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
We've had a lot of email exchanges as we were working on this project. I was so excited to see you, you know, put this collection out there. It's really cool. And I think you've taken the AI in a whole other direction. I'm going to share my screen so that people can see what I'm talking about.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, like you've really, you know, I think the last project we looked at was kind of like putting a bunch of inputs in and letting the AI really move around. And in your case, what I love about your project is the way you trained it, also really control, like you've kind of harnessed the AI in this way where you've kind of figured out how it thinks. And so you've kind of like manipulated in the direction that you want it to go.
Yeah. Actually, that's I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did find that what I was trying to do did kind of push the boundaries of what it was doing, what the Playform AI could do, because what I noticed is where I've actually worked with some GAN in the past, some other GAN projects in the past, but what I really liked about Playform was the way it's organized and how you can really take a look at like the broad capabilities that the AI can work with. And what I was trying to do is kind of narrow in the AI and kind of guide it like into a very specific path. And it did come out. I mean, what I found was, while it didn't go exactly the way I was like trying to push it, it kind of went in a different way, which I found was fine. Like, it was really exciting just to see what was happening. And the colors I thought like came out amazing. And like the patterns that came out were amazing. And yeah, it was a really exciting project to work with. I'm definitely going to continue with it, but probably wait a little bit, because I feel like right now I'm just kind of like happy with where it's going at this stage. But
yeah, you gotta let inspiration guide you.
Yeah, exactly. I'd actually used the inputs that I had for training the model were all created using that's great if you can show it. A pattern that I created a few years ago. I like to incorporate ciphers and codes in my work, a kind of an homage back to like cypherpunk, the cypherpunk movement in the 90s and 2000s. But so I no one has actually ever cracked the code yet, but I don't think most people have really spent too much time trying. But I wanted to see, could the AI actually kind of repeat back some of these patterns in a way that would, like, I mean, I didn't expect anything to be legible or like any sort of words to be recreated, but maybe randomly. What happened was actually it seemed to want to focus more on just like the aesthetics and the colors, and I thought that was fine too. Like the way it focused on that created some amazing patterns and textures that I was not anticipating, and I thought were beautiful. So I was really happy with it.
Yeah, like I noticed in the description, like you talk about the echo, right? Like I love the title, Code Echo, because as you mentioned, this kind of like cryptography type of thing that's going on, where you have secret codes within your art, and then by like I just love that kind of messaging around AI being an echo. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I think actually the name came from just having explored the outputs and the results of the project, because I was wondering, would it be able to in some way, maybe in the future. I mean, I've played with some of the text-based AI before, and I think it's like fascinating how it's almost convincingly human in some ways, where you put in a question or some input in text, and it will respond in text, and those messages, those sentences make sense and could easily have been written by a human. And I was kind of considering like, well, could you do that visually in some ways, where like instead of it being text-based, it could be symbol-based, and the symbols I used specifically for this project were kind of systematic, and the patterns could be pretty easily like picked out, and you could see like each code or each symbol is basically made of the same shapes. So I thought maybe that would be the first step towards seeing if like there could be a response back within symbols. And what it just felt like an echo in a way, where it was like there was a response. It wasn't the same exact thing. It wasn't crystal clear, but there was some sort of like mimicking, or like there's a distortion, but there was something being responded and played back. So
what I also love too is like your work is so like it's a 2D image, but it looks three-dimensional. And that title of Echo, it like when I look at the art and I kind of read the description that you wrote, I felt like the 3D box shape also, like that's where the echo is coming from. Like there's kind of that dimension there as well.
That's really cool. I didn't specifically think about that. I do design a lot of my works in the past couple years with the concept of metaverse in mind. I work with creating 3D assets for Decentraland and a few other like metaverse projects. And one of the thoughts I had when I was like some of the first months after like trying out Decentraland, I was like, what kind of like 2D artwork would look cool in a 3D like platform? And eventually I led to actually making a project where you could go inside the artwork. So the artwork looked like it was two-dimensional, but had a 3D element to it. And then as you got closer, it actually teleported you inside of it. So you became like kind of like exploring the inside of the artwork in a 3D form. So I was playing with a little bit of like the concept, like what's a metaverse native artwork. So like when when I had a lot of my works do have a 3-dimensional element to them. So yeah, and it makes sense there would be an echo. And
exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great segue into kind of diving more into your NFT career and sharing more about that. I know you've been selling on several different marketplaces. You've been really active in generative art on platforms like Art Blocks. Can you kind of just share how you got into NFTs and what that journey's been like?
Sure. I should clarify, I don't have any artwork on Art Blocks, but I'm very active in the community, and I love Art Blocks. I find it, no, it's fine. I did have a project. I started to explore coding for Art Blocks. I have not really gotten to a place where I'm happy with the output yet, but so that would be a lot of JavaScript coding, and it's a different kind of style of creating, which I'm still trying to figure out personally. But I find Art Blocks artworks to be amazing. Most of my artwork right now is on Maker's Place, but I probably will be releasing on Foundation soon.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's like you said, like Art Blocks, there's like a whole other style going on there. It's a lot more complex because you do need to know how to code. With Playform, we're really focused on delivering no code solutions because, it's kind of unrealistic to expect that the most creative people in the world could also code. And then, I've just been really blown away by like the different marketplaces and the different styles. Maker's Place, we have some friends over there, great company. We've also had a lot of Playform artists sell their super rares and other platform that we've seen a lot of Playform art go to. And Foundation, that's been like a whole, that community has been very active as well.
Oh yeah. I'm excited to kind of dive in there soon. But I think that what you're talking about with the generative art, it's like, it's an interesting crossover between people who are very creative and people who code specifically, and like people who are really proficient in code, I think is kind of like the interesting overlap. But I do find that like what Art Blocks does have a different kind of generative output with Playform. I still think it's generative in a different way, but I think that the generative element to it, there's like an overlap there, which is kind of fascinating. I've been exploring that a lot because it does have like this kind of like very distinct element of letting go at a certain point in the creation process, which I think is a little different depending on how the generative art comes about. But both have that element to it, which is something that really I found fascinating, and is why I've explored it for a while now.
Yeah, and it's like I personally find it really interesting. Generative art has been around for a while, but really in the NFT space is where you're seeing the kind of enthusiasm and explosion. Like I go to NFT conferences, I meet people just in the world, and when I mention I'm the CEO of a generative art startup, they like, oh my God, I love generative art. And like, they get so excited about it. That enthusiasm is amazing.
Yeah. It is interesting. I do think so. I knew I was kind of in the crypto space starting around 2013. I became kind of just obsessed with Bitcoin for a while. I was designing logos for startup companies back then. That's kind of like I've always been very fascinated with technology in general. But I do think that there is, I think there's something about it, especially with people who are tech-minded. They see, especially in terms of like AI and generative art, there's this possibility that really hasn't been fully explored yet. I mean, there is definitely a history of generative art with the mid-century. I mean, if you go into the Art Blocks Discord, everyone's talking about Solowit like all the time, and it's understandable. Like you can see that influence in that kind of artwork, and then you go into this AR artwork, which is like more fluid and kind of mysterious. But both have these like capabilities to them, I think, is what's fascinating about it. This kind of what's going to happen in the future when these things become more complex and developed.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're at the cusp of something really exciting. And as you mentioned, it's this convergence of art, technology, these layers, as well as, as you pointed out, the creator kind of loses control at one point. But the really cool thing, especially this is why we built ArtMine, was that while you're giving up control, it's not so much you're giving up, you're kind of sharing that control and saying, I'm going to collaborate with you, come in and participate with me, right? It's such a different experience from just going to a gallery, looking at an artwork and saying, oh, I like it, oh, I don't like it, that kind of criticism. It's more like, oh, I like it and I'm going to add to it. I'm going to participate in it, which I just find that so exciting and beautiful.
Yeah, actually, that's really why I love Playform, because the way you have created and organized all of the tools, and the way you can review what's been created and then go back and actually have kind of a back and forth with the tool in a way it's really intuitive. And you're right, there's moments where you can let go, and then moments where you can kind of come back and be like, okay, well, this is what happened. You get this like output, a selection of artworks that have been created, and you can start to see, well, what do I want to do differently to move it in a different direction? And I think that's like, it's kind of a back and forth where, yeah, it's a collaboration for sure. Like the tool you actually are collaborating with the tool, which I think is very different. Yeah.
Yeah. Whoops. Sorry. I clicked on the wrong project. But yeah, so thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's been great to show this. And I just love that juxtaposition that we just had with going from Terry's project, which is kind of more abstract, and then coming to your project, which was just like the way you controlled the machine. It's just really exciting. Like it's kind of seeing that human insight, like just what you brought to this project. I just found this series incredibly fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
All right. And I'm going to take you down. All right. Next, I'm going to be bringing up Jillian Godzill, who I'm really excited to talk about because she's going to add a whole other dimension to this conversation. Hi, Jill.
You. Hello. How are you?
It's great to see you. We've had many great conversations as you've been working on this project, and it's just been so great to get to know you. And I'm excited that you're on this stage now to share your story with everyone else.
You know what? I'm so privileged watching your first two artists, Terry and Mitch. They're both so different, and they both so blew me away. I mean, the flowers and the thinking and the signs. Oh my goodness, beautiful. And then look at Mitch's ones. I'm like, oh my God, I love those two. He reminds me of Kandinsky or something. You have such talented people on this. And do you know what? May I say that I feel very, privileged and lowly to be on here, but also what's really exciting is that I want to say that Playform has given me an opportunity to stretch my wings, to flower, because I wouldn't have had the confidence to do what Playform has done with me. I'm just blown away.
Oh, thank you. And I'm really excited to also have you on. And you're so right. The diversity of the talent on this show today is so exciting because it really shows the full potential of Playform. There's just so many things you can do with it. And as when you reached out to me and the ideas that you've brought to the table, you're really coming at it from a different angle as a journalist and storyteller. You're kind of bringing this whole other aspect to the platform, which I'm really excited to talk about. So yeah, why don't we just start there, kind of giving some context to your background and your kind of journey within crypto, which I also love because you're a woman in crypto and we need more of us. And I feel like you really represent a lot of what's going on today in regards to women in crypto.
Well, can I say, first of all, do you know what I feel like? I was talking about this project to somebody at the weekend, and I said, I feel like Tracy Enham when she had that tent, that tent, and she put her lovers' names on it, the installation, and it was in the UK, and it was like for the first time. Look at Charles Saatchi was promoted. We're like, what is that? What is that? So yeah, my background very quickly to explain why this is so exciting for me. Long time in fintech, 30 plus years, all around the world. Got married, came back to Ireland, lived happily ever after. Only I didn't. Big house, big mortgage. Hit the recession and divorce. Ex went back to the UK, became bankrupt, and my life just went. No other way to say it. Like, I don't know. And so I'm there. It was a real. So I'm there with my two young daughters, and everything's going wrong that can possibly go wrong. And even to the fact, I didn't tell you this, with the big house, we moved out because I couldn't afford it. I tried to rent it out to try and pay the mortgage, and we rented a little cottage around the corner. And then we had one tenant, then another tenant, and the drug squad evicted the last tenant, because guys were growing weed all over the house. It was a grow house. And it's just like, and you know the funny thing, being in Ireland, the drug squad had a dawn raid at 6 o'clock in the morning. They came in, the Kalashnikovs and 7 big cars came in and they bashed down the front door. It's lovely Georgian manor house. Sure, the back door was open. This is Ireland. The back door is always open. Anyway, so I went through a lot of trauma. And a couple of things. One of the things before I left the house, so the house, it was a lovely Georgian manor house, Georgian, 2-story with a basement with a wing. So, you know, it was like 5,000 square feet or something. So 8 bedrooms, 2 reception rooms, downstairs basement, kitchen. It was a very nice, it wasn't overbearing, but quite a large house. We had intention of running it as a guest house, didn't do that. Anyway, so that was sort of the house. And then we did it all up. And then when everything went pear-shaped and the divorce and the recession and the drug guys, everything went crazy. Before I left the house, before I had to hand over the keys, keys in the countryside, who cares, because the back door's always open. Anyway, I said, you know what, I was in my early 40s and I'd done a fabulous at 40 shoot with some friends. I said, oh, I'd love to do a nude shoot. Oh, I'd love to do a nude shoot, as you do. So we did this nude shoot. And I totally forgot all about it. It was very tastefully done. It was an amateur photographer friend, and we just did the shoot. I never thought about it again. And some of the shots are great, some of them not so great. But anyway, there was just nothing ever happened to it. And then the house was taken. And then during lockdown, because I'm a writer, right? And I love that Terry says, and she's also a writer too as well. During lockdown, I started painting. I haven't painted since I was a child. And when I started painting these, I call them my painted ladies. And my kids were saying to me that now they're grown-up children, grown-up ladies now, and they said, Mom, you've always doodled these images, these little ladies that I paint. I've been, Dorset, and I'm going, have I? And I went, oh, yeah, I have. So I started painting them, and I painted them in acrylics and pastels, and just had a lot of fun. So, and I remember I wrote an article, and I said, have I become an artist? Because I've always had a commercial life. I don't want to be commercial. I want to be an artist. I want to be able to, I would actually, if someone waved a magic wand, stick me in a pinafore and paint splatter and a laptop and I don't have to worry about bills and looking after my kids. I would just want to do that, whether I'm good or bad.
A lot of people share that ambition, right? Like I think I feel like so many people, I mean, artists in different forms, right? Some people want to write, some people want to paint, some people want to draw, like, you know, or sing, you know, or create music. But I think that's what's so exciting about what's happening right now. You know, there's actually an avenue to do that.
Well, for the first time, actually, I wrote an article about becoming an artist with these images that I did. And someone very meanly wrote, stick to the day job, girl. I was very cross. And then my other friends jumped on that poor man. He said, oh, I didn't mean that, because you're a good writer. I'm going, yeah, thanks very much, Buster. But what I've loved about this project is a couple of things. The house.
Actually, I'm going to jump into this a little bit, right? I'm going to
show
the screen so that people can see what you're talking about. And, you know, kind of get into your model here.
So I have the house and I've me naked, well, you know, nudie, whatever. Not showing too much. The odd nipple every so often, maybe. But that was about it.
Do you want me to show the inputs, or would you like?
Oh, no, show the inputs. Yeah, no, they're kind of fun. Do.
So
they're very modest. They're not. There's nothing racy there. I don't think. I was. Yeah. You can't really see them. I don't think we can screen in, whatever. But I was actually very happy doing that. And then with the house, because I love the house. I used to say, let me be taken out of that house in a box, which is an Irish expression, as in let me be dead before I leave this house. And of course I wasn't. The bank evicted me, whatever. And but putting them together, and then I'm thinking of Tracy Enham's tent. And I'm going, okay, so I restored the house. It was going to be knocked down. Restored the house. I was photographed in the house, and now I'm using Playform to create these images. And some of them are just, I'm like going, oh. And you know what I want to do as well? Because, you know, people want to do, some people want to paint. I want to do everything. I want to go back, because I'm a big fan of Modigliani, for example. I just love his stuff. I'm going, oh, I want to pick some of these and paint them. Go back and actually.
We also have the Modigliani tools within our kit as well, too. So you can use AI and collaborate. And I actually, like, what I find so interesting about your inputs is, like, you've taken your story, you fed the AI all these just like visual like this photography that represents what you went through, your experience. and then like these abstract outputs come out, right? Like your experience becomes the paint.
It's beautiful.
And the AI is generating all these things, and you see fragments of your story represented in here.
Yeah, fragments. It's so beautiful. I look at it, I see bits, and I'm going, oh my goodness, and I see it's just
generate, different results from here. But I think your story is truly one of like the power of vulnerability, like taking something so personal and kind of sharing it with the world in this whole new output.
And I wrote in my notes for this, because you were saying put some notes down about, and I listen a lot to Wayne Dwyer, because the way you're kind of like going, I got to get on with life, and he's a wonderful inspirational speaker. So I listen to him a lot, trying days that are tough to get up on top of things again. And he has this wonderful thing about, he says, your past is like the wake. You're in a boat, you look behind the wake. You can see it, it's there, it's real. But the wake does not inform the way that the boat goes. And he's trying to help people to identify their past, but also move on. And when I put this all together, I suddenly went, oh, this way I can look at my past and go, oh my God, it's so beautiful. It's made, I can almost cry now, but it's made something was so painful and so difficult and so everything. I'm going, oh my God, there's so much beauty in that. And it's not that suffering is beauty. I don't believe that suffering is beauty, but just the thing combination together with Playform, it is just phenomenal.
Well, I love that, because being able to look at a painful past, but with literally the lens of the future, right? Like the technology that you used to create this wasn't even available when you went through it. And so, to come out stronger and different and new, and to, and I just wanted to also pull up, these are some of the generations that people have been minting from this project. And it's just, I think it's just really cool, because they're getting a little fragment of your story, and they're probably seeing a whole new aspect of their own story through it as well. And that connection is just really beautiful.
And I thank Playform and you, Jennifer, for this, because it's allowed me, I'm quite a forward-looking, positive person, and I'm very much grateful for my children, for my life, for things that happen. So it's not, we all have a past. But what is beautiful about this project, and I'm going to do lots more of them, is my past can be beautiful as opposed to something that I've got through and I've survived. This is actually, and it's not, or sometimes you look at your past and you go, I survived, so I'm stronger and I'm great, and you go forward, and that's wonderful. But this has allowed me to look back on the pain and go, oh, that's beautiful. There's something there, So that's amazing. I'm very privileged, and I thank you very much.
And thank you. I think you've really also helped us present a whole new use case for how AI art can be used by storytellers, and to think about story in the context of AI and art. And, just thank you so much for, being so open and sharing. And, I think your story is something that's going to resonate with so many people. And, I just really love the authenticity and vulnerability you bring to this.
You are very kind. I thank you so much for the opportunity to look back at my past and be wowed by it, rather than like, oh my God, it's terrible. I'm going, wow, how beautiful. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye. I'm going to now bring on our next and last presenter, Andre. Super excited to have you.
Hi, Jennifer. It's an honor to come here.
How are you doing?
Great. Amazing. Excited, touched.
Yeah, so I'm going to pull up your project. Once again, like each of these projects that have been presented today have been so unique and different. And I think you've gone into this whole other realm. It feels very like psychedelic and and I also noticed that it's coming from ALA or like you use these cool little symbols, but could you tell us a little bit more about ALA Art Lab, your art practice and how that brand operates?
Yes, I come from motion design and art direction. So it's very specific tools, and it's a little bit challenging to come from design to art, because it's very different thinking. And I've been experimenting the last years, trying to figure out one specific style in art, like something recognizable or so. And I just saw that it doesn't work. I cannot put myself in one specific thing. So I turned it from artist to art laboratory. That's the meaning of. I begin from many experiments, then I take it closer to specific solutions, and
Yeah, no, I think that's like, the other really cool use case, right? Coming from a different practice. Like I noticed with your inputs, it's very geometric designed. This is all original stuff that you've been designing and creating. And I love that, how you just explained it. Designers are not necessarily artists, but designers can be artists. And it's almost like you've used the AI to help guide you there, where you've taken your design work and then now the AI can just like turn that into art.
And the funny thing, it was the results that I got from here. It's really unpredictable. It's very beautiful to my mind. Like first time I saw it, it was also one of my first models at Playform. And when I saw it, I just was like 1 hour just looking and going through snapshots, and it just was wow. And I also felt like when I was a kid, I was really fascinated by technology, and I all the time look for like these fresh new solutions for in creative thing and stuff. And it's the first time I felt like here it is, what I was waiting for my whole life. Like there are many very creative tools, like for example these paintings, the input paintings done in it's called Flame Painter. Very rich set of procedural brushes, and probably no other way to create such things. And AI took it to a new whole level, like to dialogue. Not just a tool that I use, it's like a sentient being that I in dialogue with. Kind of Matrix, but in a good way.
And when we talked to Mick earlier today, like he kind of figured out how to control the AI, whereas I feel like you set it loose. Like you really went the opposite direction of kind of saying go wild, right? And it's really also replicate in the results. Like you have such different varied results. This is going to be a really fun one to mine on ArtMine, because I really think you kind of don't know what you're going to get. Each number corresponds to a unique result, and each of these results are unique and one of a kind. And as you can see from the model that is powering those results, everything's just kind of, there's a lot of chaos and variety and just so much going on in these works.
The most interesting here to my mind, because it's later I made more models, like trying to understand to build a more consistent dialogue with the machine, the models, and some I succeeded really good, some less. But I begin to understand what's the way it understands me, so I can tell something more clear to the model. But here I still can, some things after training more models I can follow, and some I really have no idea how I got there. I think, and these are the most beautiful things in here.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways that you can apply AI to your art practice, and I just love this kind of variety that we've been able to show. And I mean, like some of these artworks, like I'm just looking at right now, I mean, it looks like lightning bolts. Like it's so cool. Like just the unpredictability and the chaos. And it's very explosive, which is just so cool.
And also organic motifs, like these patterns, like branching. And so I don't know where it took it from, but it's funny that it's one of the topics I'm working in my art, like exploring the organic things, the anatomy. You can see it more in the other works, but like it guessed my intentions in a way. I don't know how.
Well, in your inputs, there's like, the things that we do, right? Like as we were talking about earlier when I was talking to Terry, it's like each artist has a unique perspective on the world. And so even things that, a lot of artists will see things that surprise them within Playform. And they'll reach out to us and say, did you build that? We're like, no, we don't do that. Our AI just works off what you train it on. But there must be something going through your art that you might not see in the process, but the AI picks up as it's learning from you.
Amazing.
Yeah. So what inspired you to get into NFTs and to make this available as an NFT?
First, just some friends told me, your digital works have to be on NFT. And I didn't think about it. But when I begin to touch it, like I revealed, if I would be a model, I'm more trained on like a classical approach, the academy art, something that I learned before. And like digital, it's really wild in comparison to the academic art. It's like a little bit cuts the roots and creates something new. And it's like I felt like also digital and also the generative and AI art. When I saw it, I told it's a beginning of a new age. I told to myself something that like soon will be something that never been before, and here it is.
Yeah. So where are you going next? What's next for you and for this project around Neural Gardens?
Actually, I want to take some materials from these projects and some my other models and to use it for. I have a big upcoming project for University Gallery in Tel Aviv, a big gallery that it's still in the planning, but it's supposed to be the contemporary artist performance and using of AI and video projection to pick up this visual feedback of the dancer, to process it and to return back a project on his body and to make interactive performance. And I think I want to take something from this project there.
Wow. That's like, yeah, that sounds like a whole other next level. It's like very meta, to bring this AI art and human interaction. That sounds really cool. Really excited to see that. You definitely have to take some photos and share it with us on social media.
Sure.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today and telling us about this project. Anyone who's interested, you can go to ArtMine, look up Neural Gardens. This model is super fun. I think just the variety here is just so unpredictable. You can probably pick this, keep generating for hours and just continue to just be surprised by what you get next. And so definitely go and check it out and play around with it. Thank you so much for your time today, Ari.
Thank you very much.
All right. So I'm just going to conclude the show with, in addition to the artist projects, we've been dropping some just Playform AI projects that are free or really cheap so that people get an opportunity to really play around with the technology and get to know more about how the AI works. And in honor of Valentine's Day that's coming up next week, we have a cool little project that we put up. There's 50 NFTs available of this project, which I'm calling AI Love You. It's bouquets of flowers that were generated using AI. You can see the varied different outputs here. The inputs were just images of flower bouquets. But if you are looking for something cool and special to gift to someone this Valentine's Day, why not some AI art NFTs? So that's all for today's show today. And thank you to all the artists who joined us today. I'm particularly just really proud of how this episode turned out, because I think we showed you so many different ways that AI art can be applied. And it really shows the diversity of how this is all reflective of the creators. We purely provide a platform for them to use. This is a toolkit, but ultimately our goal is to really help that human creativity shine through the technology that we've developed. And thank you to all the artists for joining us. If you're interested in any of these projects, please visit artmind.playform.io. And if you want to try to create something for yourself, go to playform.io. Thank you.